Hello and welcome back to OCD Coded. My name is Erin Brown and I am your OCD coding guide. I am also a licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health counselor. I have OCD myself, and it took me a long time to learn how to understand myself and accept myself and then start to express myself more. And I really want to help you and anyone who struggles with that to be able to do the same for themselves, to learn how to understand themselves and accept themselves and then express their true self out in this world. And so if you want more information, you can check out my website at ocdcoded.learnworlds with an S .com. And to see about the course that goes more into depth about this and groups where we work on these kind of things together and be a mirror for each other and help to practice understanding and expression. And so today we're going to be talking about OCD and time. It has been fascinating to me that there most often seems to be a time component with OCD, whether it's the fear of like losing time or not doing something in time or missing something they're supposed to be doing. It happens a lot with purpose, people feeling like they're missing their purpose or they're running out of time to do their purpose or an opportunity they're going to miss. And that fear of that time component being a really big part. And with neurodivergence, time blindness is a big part of that, which is kind of a struggle to perceive time, and so it's not being sure whether how much time has passed. And so like especially if you're really focused in on something that that time can totally not exist essentially in that moment. And while that can be a good thing in a flow state, and so like with everybody, it's one of the things we want. That flow is also how adults play and how important that is with play, with problem solving and imagination and practicing these skills. And so, and how a flow state can be like that. But with time blindness, it just becomes really challenging to interpret that sense of time. And I noticed that with OCD, that's a part of it, is that fear of I'm not able to interpret something. That fear of being misunderstood is such a huge piece of it. And that, this fear of I'm doing something wrong, essentially. And that like I'm doing something wrong and I'm going to get in trouble. And I see a lot of overlap with that with OCD and trauma, but making sure to, you know, honor and hold space for it can be either or both. And so just trying to understand it a little more and trying to like start to lovingly turn toward it instead of um, let it control us, be obsessive about it. And that idea of like, I can't stare at it you know, um, and I can't just pretend it's not there. How can we start to learn this about ourselves and approach this or interact with it in a different way, that I have to accept that I'm going to struggle with perceiving time, and that'll be something that, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with me about that. That's not a moral failing, that I have time blindness and that I'm going to need some external cues to help me with that, whether it's setting timers or just however I need to however works for me, and then however works for you, about how you would start to just practice responding to that different, going into more like experimental and curiosity mode of what if I tried it this way instead of why am I like this and something's wrong with me. It becomes, okay, this is something I have, and I'm gonna, practice these different ways to see about how I can embrace this as part of me, but also not let it determine anything more than that. I can accept that this is a piece and or a part. And there's a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks that has a whole section about time that I found really fascinating. The whole book is really great, and I refer to it a lot as far as helping get out of comfort zones. And I've read the book before I had been diagnosed with OCD and after, and I found it very helpful with that also, and how to kind of approach fears in this different way. And he has so many great insights in there that I really found helpful. And so some of his stuff with time and talking about that too, like how we can kind of, stop, like, how we kind of, lie to ourselves, I guess is one way to say it, or say like, I don't have the time to do this. It's like, yes, we will never have time to do the things we don't want to do. And, we'll always have time for the things we do want to do. And that idea of we can make time and we can, but not even on a just like I can carve out time in my schedule kind of way, but a really looking at time as a dimension, like space and time are both dimensions. And, how do we learn to work with it instead of feeling like we're a slave to time or blaming time for why we can't do something, but start to interact with it as a relationship. And I thought it was really fascinating. So that'll be something, definitely to check out if you're interested in more info about that. And I know for me, that one of the things that I struggle with so much is FOMO and the fear of missing out, the acronym for that, and how it seems that FOMO was made for people with OCD or like about people with OCD. They talk about OCD being a fear-based disease. Um, and so, and how, or, the doubting disease, there are different names for this. And I think of it, sometimes it's good to think of it as an allergy to fear and how we can, if we can look at it this way instead of, again, as a moral failing and how much that can help us to begin to accept it as part of us and then learn to work with it instead of against it and how empowering that can be. And so, FOMO is there's two ones about it. There was with the person who developed this, and so that FOBO is the other one, that the fear of a better offer, and that can be so much of it too. And in our day and age with just having so much information at our fingertips and so many options at our fingertips, whether it's from ice cream flavors to online dating to so many different things, we have access to this. And so there's always that fear of what if the next thing is the best thing? And then also with scrolling and all that different stuff really plays into those fears of what if the next thing is the best thing? What if I miss something because I wasn't online, or however it may present in your world. And so um and for me, like that FOMO and going to bed is one of the biggest things that becomes such a challenge, that I do not want to go to bed. I struggle with it. And with OCD, it's so common that as soon as you kind of identify it and start to try and work on it, it becomes even harder to do, like even harder for me to go to bed when I'm like identified it and be like, and decided that I was going to work on this in my life. And it's something I've been known for with my friends ever since I can remember. I never want to go to bed. I always want us to have this peak experience. I'm chasing that peak experience. If I want to have the best night ever and talk about all these important things and have this great deep connection, and um, but that, as I've had to learn the hard way so many times, that chasing that peak experience and trying to force that peak experience, it's a less chance of that peak experience happening or having a good connection or doing any of those things. And how to be able to accept that that it can't be a peak experience every time, and it's not supposed to, and how to find the joy in the more day-to-day kind of experiences and connections, and seeing that as valuable too, and to enjoy the peak experience when it's there, but also to be able to not uh, obsess about it, to chase after it, to try to force it to happen. And The Big Leap, the book The Big Leap, talks about that a lot too, in that sense of, and I found it to be true in my own practice, that like the more willing I am for to be open to whatever is going to happen, the more I get closer to the peak experience, or the more, if I'm willing to do something and it not be, and not have this expectation of how it's going to be, the more willing, the more possible it becomes to manifest that for myself. And so I feel like I need a different way of explaining it, but it's just, such a good um, example of that. Of like in his example, it's about meditating, and that if I meditate without expecting that I'm going to get some big realization out of it, then I'm more likely to get a big realization out of it, because it was my willingness of to be able to sit there and to take as long as it might need to for myself. And so I'm really working on that with this, and how to, with going to sleep. And so how can I be aware of when I'm trying to go to sleep? Can I sit in that discomfort of what is my fear in this moment? How can I respond to this fear differently? How can I, soothe myself without judgment, or at least, observe myself without judgment, and start there if it's if that's the first one of those first steps, and that's where I can start if needed. And so I really hope this was helpful as a little insight into some things about that. Please reach out with any questions or comments you might have. I would love to hear your thoughts or your insights, things you're struggling with that you would like me to dive deeper in, and I will continue to share my experiences and practice my own expression that is terrifying, to me. And then I hope to encourage you to really practice expressing your true self as well. So until next time, I hope you have a fabulous one and see you soon. Bye.